She held his hand through every fevered night, whispered encouragement through trembling lips, and never once left his side, even when he didn't know who she was. Years of devotion, of love tested by illness and memory, had brought her to this fragile, terrifying moment, the day he finally remembered her name. But what he said next changed everything, and would challenge their family, their love, and everything she thought she knew about their past. A story of heartbreak, hope, and the redemptive power of love awaits. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated. Martha had loved David since the moment she first saw him, a bright-eyed boy with a crooked smile and a laugh that made her heart skip. They had built a life together filled with quiet mornings sipping coffee, evenings wrapped in blankets on the porch, and dreams whispered under starlit skies. But life had turned cruel. A sudden illness stole David's memory, leaving him a stranger in the house they had filled with love. Every day, Martha tended to him with patience and devotion, feeding him, reading his favorite books aloud, reminding him of the life they had shared. She kissed his hand when he flinched at his reflection, whispered his favorite poems when he couldn't remember the words, and smiled through tears when he forgot her face. For months, hope had flickered and dimmed like a candle in the wind. There were days he would smile at her as though she were a friend, and she would cling to that, believing love could bridge even the deepest void. Then, one quiet evening, as the sunset painted the room in gold, David's hand found hers. His eyes, hazy but focused, met hers. "Martha," he whispered, a tremor in his voice, as if testing the sound of the name against memory. Tears blurred her vision. Her heart raced. Could it be? The name she had spoken 1,000 times, in every lullaby, every tender whisper, every prayer, finally had a home in his mind again. "Yes, it's me," she breathed, her voice trembling. A faint smile curved his lips. I remember." For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope. Hope that their life, their love, could be restored. But as she leaned forward to embrace him, a shadow crossed his face, a flicker of confusion, a question unspoken. "Martha, who am I, really?" he murmured, his voice soft but uncertain, as if the world inside him was still a maze she had yet to navigate. Martha's heart clenched. She had waited for this moment, but now, the greatest challenge lay ahead, not just to have him remember her name, but to remember the life they had shared, the love they had built. As the evening light dimmed into night, she held his hand tighter, whispering, "We'll find our way back, together." But outside, a storm began to rise, rattling the windows and the fragile threads of memory, hinting that their journey was far from over. The storm outside raged like the confusion in David's mind. Rain hammered the windows, wind howled through the trees, and the lights flickered as if the universe itself was testing their fragile moment of hope. Martha guided David to the couch, wrapping him in a blanket. "It's all right," she whispered, brushing damp strands of hair from his forehead. "You're safe. I'm here." He nodded slowly, but his eyes darted around the room, wary, as though every familiar object was hiding a secret. "The house, it feels strange," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "And you feel like someone I should know, but I can't." Her chest ached, but she smiled through her tears. "I know," she said softly. "But we'll take it one step at a time. We can remember together." Martha pulled out an old photo album, worn at the edges from years of handling. She opened it to the first page, a photograph of their wedding day, sun-drenched and smiling, hands intertwined as if nothing could ever break them apart. "Look," she said, pointing to the picture. "This is us. That day. I promised to love you, always. And I've kept that promise every single day, even when it was hard." David stared at the photograph. His eyes softened for a fleeting moment, as though he could sense the truth buried somewhere in his mind. Then he touched the picture, tracing the shapes of their faces with a trembling finger. I feel something, like a memory, but it's gone before I can hold it." Martha's heart trembled, but she held on to his hand. That's okay. Feelings are stronger than memories. Love doesn't disappear just because your mind forgets. He looked at her, searching, as if trying to bridge the gap between past and present. Martha. I want to remember. I want to come back to you. But, what if I can't? Her grip tightened. Then I'll wait. And I'll remind you, every single day, until your heart knows what your mind forgets. The storm outside reached a crescendo, shaking the house, and then, suddenly, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the room, leaving only the sound of their breathing and the beating of their hearts. David shivered, and Martha pulled him closer. Don't be afraid, she whispered, her forehead resting against his. We're together. That's what matters. He nodded, leaning into her warmth, but as their embrace deepened, a faint, unfamiliar sound echoed through the darkness, a knock at the front door. Martha froze. Who could that be, in this storm? David shook his head. I don't know. But I have a feeling, whatever it is, it's going to change everything. And in that moment, neither of them knew if it would bring danger, hope, or a secret from their past that could either heal or shatter them forever. The knocking grew louder. 3 slow, deliberate raps that echoed through the storm. Martha's breath caught in her throat. She rose from the couch, her hand still trembling from the aftershock of David remembering her name. Stay here, she whispered. David's brow furrowed. No, please don't leave me. She turned back, saw the fear in his eyes, the fear of forgetting again, of being left alone in the dark, and her heart broke. I'll only be a moment, she promised. As she made her way toward the door, the flicker of lightning illuminated the hallway. She reached for a candle on the table, lighting it with shaking hands. The flame cast a warm, trembling glow as she opened the door. Standing in the rain was a young woman, soaked to the bone, clutching a worn leather satchel. Her eyes, dark and searching, locked onto Martha's. Mrs. Reynolds, the stranger asked. Her voice trembled, but there was something hauntingly familiar about it. Martha hesitated. Yes, who are you? The young woman stepped forward, pulling something from her satchel, a photograph. She held it out with trembling fingers. I think you might know my father. Martha froze. Her eyes fell to the photograph, David, years younger, smiling beside a woman who wasn't her. The world tilted. The air left her lungs. Behind her, David's voice broke through the darkness. Martha? Who is it? The young woman's eyes softened. My name is Lily, she said quietly. Anne. I've been looking for him. For my father. Martha's heart pounded in her chest. She turned toward the living room, where David stood, pale and fragile, the candlelight flickering across his face. He looked at the girl for a long, painful moment. His lips parted, his eyes wide. And then, in a voice that sent chills down Martha's spine, he whispered, Lily? Martha's hand went cold. The candle flickered, the storm outside roared louder, and the 3 of them stood frozen in that fragile moment, past and present colliding, truth and love trembling on the edge of revelation. And then, from somewhere deep inside the house, another sound broke the silence. A faint, rhythmic tapping. But this time, it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from upstairs. The sound from upstairs came again, steady, deliberate, like footsteps pacing in the dark. Martha's heart pounded. She turned toward the staircase, candle flickering wildly in her trembling hand. David, did you hear that? He nodded slowly, his face pale and drawn. I know that sound, he whispered, voice almost breaking. I used to go up there. But he stopped, his brow furrowing as though an invisible wall blocked his memory. Lily, standing just inside the doorway, looked between them. What's upstairs? Martha swallowed. Just the attic, she said softly. No one's been up there in years. The three of them stood in uneasy silence, the storm's rumble filling the space where words failed. Then, determined, Martha took the first step. I need to see. David reached out suddenly, grabbing her wrist. Martha, don't. His voice trembled with fear. Please, there's something bad up there. His hand was shaking. She covered it gently, eyes filled with the same tenderness that had carried her through his darkest days. Whatever it is, we face it together. Step by step, she climbed. Each creak of the wooden stairs sounded like a heartbeat echoing through the house. Lily followed behind her, clutching her satchel, while David remained at the bottom, eyes wide, caught between confusion and terror. When they reached the attic door, Martha pushed it open. The air that spilled out was cold and stale, thick with the scent of dust and old memories. The candlelight illuminated boxes stacked against the walls, some labeled in David's handwriting, others unmarked. And then, there it was. A small, metal trunk in the center of the room. On its lid, etched faintly, was a name, Lily. Lily gasped. That's my name. Martha's hands shook as she knelt and unlatched the trunk. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied together with faded ribbon. She picked one up, the ink smudged but legible. To my daughter, Lily. I wish things were different. One day, you'll understand why I had to leave. Martha's breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakable. David's. Lily covered her mouth, tears brimming in her eyes. He wrote these, for me. From downstairs came the sound of David calling out, his voice thick with anguish. Martha, don't read them. Please. But it was too late. The candlelight flickered over another letter, one dated just weeks before his illness began. If anything ever happens to me, tell Martha the truth. She deserves to know who you are, and what I've done. Martha's hands trembled, her heart pounding like thunder in her chest. What he's done, she whispered. What truth? Before she could finish, the candle suddenly blew out, snuffed by a gust of cold air that seemed to come from nowhere. And in the darkness, David's voice echoed up the stairs, broken and filled with pain. Martha. Lily. I remember everything. The darkness felt alive, pulsing, breathing, heavy with the weight of everything left unsaid. Martha froze at the top of the stairs, clutching the cold banister as David's voice drifted up from below. I remember everything, he said again, softer this time, like a confession carried on the wind. Lily gripped Martha's arm. What does he mean? She whispered. Martha's heart raced. The candle had gone out, but her shaking hands managed to spark the lighter again. The weak flame flickered over David's face as he appeared at the foot of the stairs. He looked smaller somehow, fragile, a man who had been carrying too much for too long. His eyes met Martha's. You deserve the truth, he said. Both of you. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step seeming to cost him strength. When he reached the attic, the sight of the open trunk stopped him cold. His gaze fell on the letters. His breath hitched. I wrote those before the illness, he began. Back when I was still working in the city. There was someone I knew. Her name was Evelyn. Martha stiffened but said nothing. She worked in my office, he continued, voice trembling. We were friends, at least, that's what I told myself. But when her husband left, she turned to me for help. And in one moment of weakness, I made the worst mistake of my life. He looked at Lily, eyes filled with tears. You were born a year later. I didn't know until Evelyn wrote to me. By then, I'd already fallen in love with Martha. I wanted to do the right thing. I sent money, letters, tried to be there from a distance. But I never told your mother about you, Lily. And I never told Martha, either. Lily's lip quivered. So, you're my father. You really are. David nodded, tears streaking his cheeks. Yes. And I thought I could live with my mistake, bury it, move on. But guilt has a way of poisoning even the truest love. He turned to Martha. The stress, the lies, they tore me apart. When the illness came, I think my mind just let go. As if it was protecting me from myself. The rain outside had softened now, a gentle patter against the roof. But inside the attic, silence pressed down like a weight. Martha's heart felt as if it were splitting in two. She had cared for this man every day, fed him, prayed over him, loved him through madness, and now she stood in the ruins of a truth she had never been meant to find. She swallowed hard. You looked me in the eyes every day, she whispered, and you didn't remember me. But now, when you finally do, she trailed off, voice breaking. This is what you remember? David reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. I wanted to tell you, he said. So many times. But I was afraid I'd lose you. And then I lost myself instead. Lily wiped her eyes, stepping closer to them both. He's still your husband, Mrs. Reynolds. And he's still my father. Maybe it's not too late to fix what's broken. For a moment, no one spoke. The candlelight flickered between them, three souls bound by love, guilt, and fate. Finally, Martha exhaled. You've remembered your name, David. And mine. But now, she looked at him through tears. You have to remember what love really means. David opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the attic door slammed shut behind them with a violent crash. The flame went out. And from the corner of the attic, a soft voice whispered through the dark, a voice neither of them recognized. You shouldn't have opened the trunk. The attic plunged into darkness. The whisper, you shouldn't have opened the trunk, still hung in the air, soft and trembling like the last note of a sad song. Martha's breath caught. Who's there? She whispered. The candle flame flickered back to life on its own, a fragile light blooming against the shadows. And in that dim glow, they saw it, a photograph that hadn't been there before, resting on top of the letters. It was a picture of Evelyn, the woman from David's past, holding a baby wrapped in a blanket. She was smiling. Behind her, written in neat, looping handwriting, were the words. Forgive him. He was trying to do what was right. Lily gasped, tears filling her eyes. That's my mother's writing. David sank to his knees beside the trunk, staring at the photograph as if it were a door to the past. She must have known, he whispered. She must have known I couldn't tell the truth, not then. Martha felt her anger and sorrow wrestle inside her heart. But as she looked at the photo, the young mother, the baby, the man she loved broken beside her, something inside her softened. She remembered the nights he'd wept without knowing why, the way he'd reach for her hand in his sleep, whispering apologies he couldn't explain. Maybe part of him had been trying to confess all along. She knelt beside him and placed her hand over his. David, she said softly, the past can't be changed. But love, it can still heal what's left. He looked up at her, eyes glistening. After everything I've done, how could you forgive me? Because forgiveness isn't forgetting, Martha whispered. It's remembering, and choosing love anyway. Lily wiped her tears. Maybe we can all start again, she said gently. Not as strangers, but as a family. Outside, the storm finally broke. The first hint of dawn crept through the attic window, pale gold light spilling over the letters, the photograph, and the faces of three souls finding their way back to one another. David reached out, taking both their hands in his. Thank you, he murmured. For reminding me who I am, and who I still want to be. And as the morning sun warmed the room, Martha felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. Not perfect, not easy, but real. The trunk creaked softly, as if exhaling at last. The whisper didn't return. Only the sound of rain easing into silence, and the slow, steady rhythm of hearts learning to forgive. Weeks had passed since the storm, since the attic, since the truth had finally been faced. The house was quieter now, filled not with the tension of secrets, but with small, steady rhythms, laughter, soft conversations, and the gentle hum of ordinary life. David had begun therapy for both his memory and the emotional weight he'd carried for years. Some days were still hard, flashes of the past, confusion, and guilt, but Martha was always there, a steady presence at his side, her hand in his, her heart full of patient, unwavering love. Lily had settled into the house as well. She spent mornings helping in the kitchen, afternoons arranging old photographs, and evenings sitting with David and Martha on the porch, listening to stories of a past she'd only just begun to know. Slowly, her laughter returned, mingling with theirs in a way that felt like music. One golden afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the windows, David and Martha sat together in the garden. He held her hand, tracing her fingers with a gentle, careful touch. "I still can't believe you stayed," he said quietly. "Through everything, through my illness, my forgetfulness, my secrets. You never gave up on me." Martha smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "I never could. And I never will. Love isn't about forgetting or remembering perfectly. It's about being there, no matter what." David's eyes filled with tears. "I remember everything now. Not just your name, but all the moments I forgot. And I love you, Martha. More than ever." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Martha didn't feel the shadow of loss looming over her heart. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "And I love you, David. Always." From inside the house, Lily called softly, "Dinner's ready." The three of them laughed, their voices carrying across the garden, across the life they were rebuilding together. The storm had passed, but its lessons lingered, that love can endure the darkest moments, that forgiveness can heal the deepest wounds, and that family isn't just blood, it's the hearts who stay. And as the sun dipped low, casting a warm glow over the house, Martha looked at David and Lily, her heart full, and whispered quietly, "No matter what comes next, we'll face it together." For the first time in a long time, hope felt permanent. Spring had begun to touch the edges of the world. The garden bloomed with daffodils and tulips, and the air smelled of new beginnings. Yet, even as life returned to its gentle rhythm, there were quiet moments when the past whispered, reminders of mistakes, guilt, and memories that still felt fragile. David had his good days and his bad days. Sometimes, a flash of forgotten truth would haunt him, a detail about Lily's early years, or an old letter from Evelyn, and he would become distant, lost in thought. But Martha had learned the art of patience. She would take his hand, lead him back to the present, and remind him that love is stronger than memory. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, Lily appeared carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. "I found these by the creek," she said, placing them in a jar. "I thought they'd brighten the kitchen." David smiled faintly. "They do," he said, then hesitated. "Martha, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." Martha paused, her heart tightening. "What is it?" He looked down at the flowers, tracing the petals with his thumb. "I've been thinking about us. About forgiveness. About family. And I realize I don't want to just remember the past. I want to live the future, with you. With Lily. With the life we're building." Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled through them. "That's all I've ever wanted, David. That's what love is." He reached out and held both her hands in his. "Then let's make a promise. No more hiding. No more letting fear rule us. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Lily grinned. "I like that idea. But it comes with one condition: you, Dad, are helping me plant the garden this weekend." David chuckled for the first time in months, the sound warm and familiar. "Deal," he said. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, the three of them sat on the porch. The air was filled with the gentle buzz of spring, the scent of flowers, and the steady rhythm of a family learning to forgive, to love, and to truly be present. Martha leaned her head on David's shoulder, Lily's hand in hers. For the first time since the storm and the secrets and the illness, she felt a sense of peace she had thought was lost forever. But as the night deepened, and the stars began to appear one by one, Martha couldn't shake the feeling that life still had surprises waiting for them, lessons to teach, memories to reclaim, and love to prove again. And with a quiet smile, she whispered into the night, "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The wind rustled through the trees, as if answering her vow. A few weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail, postmarked from a city Martha and David hadn't visited in years. David hesitated before opening it, his hands shaking slightly, as though fear and curiosity were battling inside him. Martha reached for his hand. "Whatever it is, we face it together," she whispered. David nodded, tore open the envelope, and unfolded the letter. It was from Evelyn. She wrote not to claim anything, not to reopen old wounds, but to say she had finally found peace, and that she wanted to meet Lily someday, to give her a chance to know her mother's side of the story. David's eyes filled with tears as he handed the letter to Martha. I wasn't expecting this. I don't know if I can handle it." Martha held his face in her hands. "You don't have to face it alone. This isn't just about the past, it's about the future. We decide how it shapes us, not the other way around." Lily appeared beside them, eyes wide. I want to meet her. If you're okay with it, Dad. If it's safe. I want to know her too." David swallowed hard. "It's going to be complicated. But maybe it's time we stopped hiding from the truth. Maybe it's time we let love guide us again." That evening, they gathered in the living room. The storm from months before had long passed, replaced by the gentle rhythm of spring nights, but there was a quiet tension, the kind that comes before a new chapter begins. David held Martha's hand, Lily's hand resting on the other side. "No matter what happens," he said, voice steady, "we face it together. Always." Martha smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Always," she echoed. And in that moment, as the three of them sat surrounded by the life they had fought to rebuild, a sense of hope settled over the house. The past had been painful. Secrets had been revealed. Hearts had been broken. But now, for the first time in a long time, they were free to embrace the love that had carried them through it all. The future was unknown, but for the first time, it didn't feel frightening. Together, they could face anything. And somewhere in the distance, the soft whisper of the wind through the trees almost seemed to say, "The best is yet to come." The day Lily was set to meet Evelyn, the sun rose in gentle golds and pinks, casting the garden in a warm glow. Martha and David had spent the morning preparing the house, nervously straightening flowers and clearing space in the living room. Lily, too, seemed a mix of excitement and apprehension, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. When the doorbell rang, the three of them exchanged a quiet look. Martha squeezed David's hand. "Whatever happens, we face it together." David nodded, swallowing hard. He opened the door, and there she stood, Evelyn, older now, but still the same warm presence from the photographs, eyes glistening with emotion. In her arms was a small gift, a photo album she had prepared for Lily, filled with memories she had kept safe all these years. Lily's eyes widened. "Mom," she whispered. Evelyn smiled softly. "Not exactly your mother," she said gently, "but someone who loves you very much. I've watched over you from afar, and now, if you'll let me, I want to share some of your story with you." For a moment, Lily didn't move. Then, with a hesitant step, she closed the distance and embraced Evelyn. The hug was awkward at first, but slowly, warmth and connection grew between them. Martha and David watched quietly, hearts full, as a bridge long missing was being built right before their eyes. David cleared his throat. "I'm sorry," he said softly, voice heavy with emotion. "For everything. For not telling you sooner, for hiding the truth, for the pain we all carried." Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder. "We all did what we thought was right," she said gently. "But love survives mistakes. And look at this, here you all are. Together. Stronger than ever." Martha felt tears prick her eyes as she stepped forward, wrapping an arm around David. "We survived because we loved each other," she whispered. "And now we get to choose how the rest of our story unfolds, together." The afternoon passed in quiet conversation, laughter, and gentle tears. Lily listened to her mother's stories, shared her own, and slowly began weaving together the pieces of a life that had once felt broken. David and Martha watched her, hearts swelling with pride and relief. As evening settled, Martha took David's hand and led him to the porch. The sky was painted in deep purples and golds, a perfect, calm ending to a storm-filled chapter. David turned to her. "You stayed," he said softly, "through everything. Even when I couldn't remember your name, even when I couldn't remember us. And now." She smiled, leaning her forehead against his. "And now we have everything we need." From inside, Lily laughed with Evelyn, a sound bright and full of promise. Martha's heart swelled. The house, once heavy with secrets and silence, now held the warmth of love fully restored. And as the stars began to twinkle above, Martha realized something profound. Love doesn't erase the past, but it redeems it. It rebuilds. It carries us forward, stronger than before. She squeezed David's hand. "Whatever comes next," she whispered, "we'll face it together. Always." David smiled, eyes shining. "Always." The night was calm, the storm long gone. And in the quiet, the three of them, husband, wife, and daughter, finally felt whole. Months had passed since Lily met Evelyn. The house was alive with laughter, chatter, and the comforting hum of everyday life. David's memory had grown stronger, though some days were still challenging. Yet, with Martha's steadfast love and Lily's growing confidence, he had begun to embrace every moment as a gift. Spring had fully arrived. The garden, once just a patch of wildflowers, now bloomed with vibrant colors, carefully tended by all three of them. Lily had learned to plant roses, daffodils, and tulips, while David and Martha worked side by side, sharing laughter, stories, and quiet touches of affection. One bright morning, Martha found David sitting on the porch, a notebook in his hands. He looked up as she approached. "I've been writing," he said softly. "Letters. Not for anyone in particular, just to remember, to hold on to all the moments we've shared. And maybe someday, Lily will read them." Martha knelt beside him, resting her hand over his. "I think that's beautiful," she said. "It's another way to carry our love forward." Lily appeared from the garden, wiping her hands on her apron, holding a bouquet of freshly picked flowers. "Mom. Dad. Look at these," she called, her voice bright. David laughed, taking the bouquet from her. "They're perfect," he said, inhaling the fragrance. "Just like this family." The three of them shared a quiet moment, watching the sun warm the garden, their hearts full of gratitude and hope. The past, the illness, the secrets, the storms, had shaped them, but it no longer defined them. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold and lavender, Martha and David sat together on the porch, their fingers intertwined. Lily had gone inside, helping Evelyn with dinner, laughter spilling through the open windows. David turned to Martha, eyes shining. "I never thought I'd get a second chance," he said quietly. "Not just to love you, but to be the man I was meant to be. Thank you for never giving up on me." Martha smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. Love doesn't give up, she whispered. Even when memory fades, even when life is hard. We just keep choosing each other. That's how we survive, and thrive. David kissed her forehead softly. Then let's keep choosing each other. Every day. Martha nodded, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the evening and the life they had rebuilt surround her. She thought of the storms, the secrets, the moments of fear, and realized how far they had come. Lily's laughter floated down from the window once more, carrying the sound of a life fully healed, fully loved. And as the stars appeared, twinkling above their home, Martha knew one simple, powerful truth. No matter what the past held, no matter what storms may come, love was strong enough to endure. Together, they had survived. Together, they had found joy. Together, they were home. Spring turned to early summer, and the Reynolds house was full of movement and life. Lily had grown closer to Evelyn, and the two of them spent long afternoons exploring the nearby woods, picking wildflowers, and sharing stories about the past and dreams for the future. One evening, as the golden sun dipped low, David invited Martha to take a walk with him around the garden. The scent of blooming roses filled the air, mingling with the faint warmth of the day. "I never thought I'd see this," David said softly, gesturing at the garden in full bloom. "All this life, after everything we went through. I thought we lost so much." Martha smiled, her hand slipping into his. "We did lose things. But we gained so much more. Family. Love. Forgiveness. Hope. And we're still growing." They paused at the small bench by the pond. David knelt beside it, looking into the still water, then turned to Martha with a shy smile. "You know, there's something I've been thinking," he said. "We've faced so much together. And I've realized that life is short, but love is endless." So. Martha's heart fluttered, sensing the significance behind his words. "I want to make more memories. Not just surviving, but truly living. With you. With Lily. Every day. Would you marry me again?" Martha laughed softly, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "1,000 times, yes." Just then, Lily appeared, carrying a small bouquet of daisies. "Wait. Don't do it without me witnessing this," she cried, her laughter ringing through the garden. David grinned, taking Martha's hands once more. "Then it's official," he said, smiling at Lily. "We start a new chapter, together." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of pink, orange, and purple. The pond reflected the colors, as if the world itself was celebrating this moment of love restored. Martha rested her head on David's shoulder, Lily's small hand in hers. They had weathered storms, faced secrets, healed old wounds, and now, in the quiet of a summer evening, they knew one thing for certain. Love isn't just remembered. Love is chosen. Every day. And as the first fireflies began to dance across the garden, Martha smiled. She knew their story wasn't over. Life had more surprises ahead. But whatever came next, they would face it, together. Summer had settled fully over the Reynolds household. Mornings were filled with the scent of fresh bread from Martha's kitchen, the sound of birds chirping, and the laughter of Lily racing barefoot across the garden. Evenings were spent on the porch, with David reading aloud from his journal of letters and stories he'd written during his recovery. One Saturday, Lily burst into the kitchen holding a folded piece of paper. "Mom! Dad! Look what I found in the attic," she exclaimed. David and Martha exchanged a glance. "The attic again?" Martha asked with a playful smile. "Yes. I found old drawings of the house, and a map Dad made of our garden from years ago," Lily said, spreading the papers across the table. "It's like a treasure map." David leaned over, squinting at the sketches. "I remember this. I drew it for you when you were little, Lily, so we could plant flowers in secret spots. Martha chuckled. Well, I think it's time we go on a treasure hunt. The three of them spent the day following the map, rediscovering hidden corners of the garden and laughing at spots they had long forgotten. They found small surprises David had planted years before, a tiny bench tucked under the apple tree, a hidden patch of violets, and even a small box filled with colorful marbles that Lily had loved as a child. By sunset, they were sprawled on a blanket in the grass, tired but happy. David pulled Martha close. See, love, he said softly, life keeps giving us little treasures, just like this. Moments that make everything worth it. Martha rested her head on his shoulder. I wouldn't trade these moments for anything. Not the past, not the hardships, nothing. Just this, with you and Lily. Lily sat between them, leaning back against their joined hands. I think this is the best summer ever, she said with a grin. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of roses and lavender. For the first time in years, the Reynolds home was filled with peace and joy so complete it felt almost magical. And as night fell, fireflies began to dance in the garden, casting a gentle glow over the three of them. David whispered into Martha's ear, whatever comes next, we'll face it. Together. Martha smiled, tightening her hand in his. Always, she replied. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel uncertain. It felt full of life, love, and endless possibilities. One bright morning, a letter arrived in the mail, carried by a postman who always seemed to know which envelopes held surprises. David took it in his hand, glancing at the return address, a city he hadn't visited in years. Martha noticed his hesitation. Are you going to open it? She asked softly. David took a deep breath. I think, yes. We should face it together. Lily peeked over his shoulder. Another adventure? She asked, eyes sparkling. David carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a note from one of his former colleagues, someone who had known him before the illness, before the secrets, before life had pulled them in so many directions. The letter was polite but urgent. David, there's a project coming up that I think only you can handle. It's important, and it could make a real difference. I understand your situation, but the team insists on speaking with you. Please consider this. David blinked, a mix of fear and excitement in his eyes. I didn't expect this, he said. After everything, I thought my life would be just here, quiet, safe. Martha placed a hand on his arm. David, life isn't about hiding from opportunities. It's about moving forward, together. And I'll be with you every step of the way. Lily grinned. I say you go, Dad. We can handle the house, the garden, and Mom will keep me out of trouble. David laughed, a lightness returning to his heart. All right. Together, he said. We do this together. That evening, they sat on the porch, planning how he would travel, how they would manage their lives while keeping the family close. For the first time in months, David felt excitement, not fear, for the days to come. Martha leaned her head against his shoulder. You know, she said, smiling, life keeps giving us challenges. But it also gives us these beautiful moments, and I wouldn't trade a single one of them. David kissed her forehead. Neither would I. And whatever comes next, we face it as a family. No secrets. No fear. Just us. Lily's laughter floated from the garden, where she chased fireflies as the sun set, the sky glowing with soft pinks and golds. And in that moment, David realized something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope wasn't just about remembering the past. Hope was about building a future. A future full of love, full of life, full of the family they had fought so hard to protect. And as the stars began to sparkle above, the three of them, husband, wife, and daughter, knew this was only the beginning of countless new adventures together. A few weeks later, the Reynolds family found themselves packing suitcases in the sunlit living room. David's new project required a short stay in a small coastal town, and while it was work-related, Martha and Lily insisted on going along. "Adventure time!" Lily shouted, tossing a small backpack over her shoulder. "I get to explore a new town." Martha smiled, securing her own bag. "And we'll face it together, just like always." The car ride was filled with laughter, singing along to the radio, and excited chatter about what awaited them. David glanced in the rearview mirror at Martha and Lily, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't realized he'd missed during the long months of illness and recovery. Arriving in the town, they were greeted by narrow streets lined with colorful shops, the scent of saltwater in the air, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore. The town had a small, welcoming charm, exactly the kind of place that invited exploration. Their temporary home was a cozy, seaside cottage. Martha immediately began arranging the rooms, turning it into a warm, inviting space. Lily ran to the porch to watch the ocean, her laughter carried on the wind. That evening, after unpacking, the three of them sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. "This place feels magical," Martha said softly. "Like it's giving us a fresh start." David nodded. "It's more than that. It's a reminder that life doesn't stop because of what's happened in the past. We can create new memories, new adventures, together." Lily leaned against his arm. "And maybe meet some new friends too." The next morning, their adventure began in earnest. They explored the town, visiting the local market, sampling homemade pastries, and laughing as David tried, and failed, to fish on the pier. Martha took photos of everything, capturing each small, joyful moment, while Lily made friends with local children, showing them the fireflies she had taught them about back home. As the days passed, the Reynolds family grew closer than ever. Challenges came, a sudden storm on the coast, a mix-up with accommodations, and David's intense work deadlines, but they faced every obstacle together, leaning on each other for strength and love. One evening, after a long day, David and Martha sat on the porch, watching Lily play in the sand with her new friends. "Do you remember," David said quietly, "how we worried about whether we'd ever have normal days again?" Martha smiled, squeezing his hand. "I do. And now look at us. We've survived storms, secrets, and even forgetting. And here we are, alive, happy, and together. Normal doesn't even begin to describe this. It's better." David laughed softly. "Better, yes. This is better." As the sun set over the ocean, the waves reflecting pinks and golds across the sky, Martha realized something profound: life would always bring challenges. But the love they shared, the trust, the patience, the unshakable bond, would always guide them through. And somewhere in the distance, the lighthouse at the edge of the town blinked its steady light, a silent promise: no matter how far the road took them, they would always find their way home. The coastal town had become a place of joy and discovery for the Reynolds family. Days were filled with laughter, exploring hidden coves, visiting local artisans, and sharing stories over evening fires on the beach. Life had never felt so full, so vibrant, yet the town held one final surprise for them. One afternoon, Lily tugged David and Martha toward the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea. "I saw something strange from the rocks," she said, excitement sparkling in her eyes. David followed, curious, while Martha reminded Lily to be careful. At the base of a small outcropping, partially hidden by driftwood, was a weathered chest. Its metal edges were rusted, and a faintly carved heart on the lid caught the sunlight. David knelt, brushing away sand and seaweed. "This looks old," he said, gently lifting the lid. Inside were dozens of letters, sketches, and trinkets, remnants of lives long past, love stories frozen in time. Martha gasped softly. "It's like a treasure chest of stories." Lily's eyes shone. "Can we read them?" David smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "We can. But we should take them home. Every story deserves care. That evening, back at their cottage, the three of them spread the chest's contents across the table. Together, they read letters from decades ago, love notes, promises, apologies, and small, simple joys of ordinary life. Each one reminded them that life is fragile, fleeting, but beautiful when shared. Martha looked at David, her heart full. "This is what our life has been," she said softly. "Not perfect, not easy, but full of love, full of stories. And we get to write the next chapter together." David pulled her close, holding her hands. "I've remembered my name, my past, and my mistakes. But the most important thing? I remember this, us, our family, and the love that carries us forward. And I never want to forget it again." Lily leaned into them both. "And I get to be part of it. All the adventures, the laughter, and maybe even some mischief." They laughed together, the sound mingling with the gentle crash of the waves outside. For the first time in years, every part of their story felt complete, the past reconciled, the present alive, and the future wide open. As night fell, the family stepped onto the porch, gazing at the stars reflecting on the calm sea. The lighthouse blinked steadily in the distance, a reminder that no matter how dark the nights, there was always a guiding light, love, family, and hope. David held Martha's hand, Lily's hand in the other. "No matter where life takes us next," he said, "we face it together." Martha smiled, eyes glistening with tears of joy. "Always." And in the quiet of that coastal night, surrounded by the people she loved most, Martha knew with certainty, they had survived storms, secrets, and fear, and they had emerged stronger, happier, and unbreakably united. The waves whispered their gentle song, the stars shone like promises in the sky, and the Reynolds family embraced the truth they had fought so hard to learn: love is not just remembered. It is lived.